So this tutorial comes because one of the major questions I get is, well, how do I use the feedback? And what I see between your draft and the final copy is that a lot of the time you just correct the punctuation, but you don't really look at the big picture stuff. And it needs to be the other way around. It is the big picture feedback where we look at phrasing and we look at the how and the concept that will actually improve your writing. The punctuation errors, the capitals, they're going to make it more sophisticated, but essentially you're not going to make it a stronger piece. So I'm going to go through a couple of the feedback from people in class. This is one. So this is what one person is looking at. And yep, if you have a look here, there's basic punctuation errors, but the major things you need to look at are on here. My representation is too broad or descriptive, and when we look at it, war is a horrific time and life-changing. What I would be suggesting, the main focus here is that it is life-changing. So I would get rid of that and just change it to war as a life-changing experience. Because if something is horrific, it's going to be life-changing. So you're kind of saying the same thing in there. The other one here now is phrasing, and some of you would have had highlighting that was green and it said boring phrasing. That's the stuff like this shows, the quote is. And I want you really, if I have a look at this writing, how many times we're using the same sentence start. Now, this is the stuff you need to be thinking about with your phrasing. All of this is putting a stop. It's stopping the flow. So this does this, this does this. This is the phrasing that I was highlighting in green for your boring phrasing. What I need you to think about is this one. This representation matters. We don't need that. And when we look at the example that was there, we didn't need it. We would look at putting in, changing this to, the poem allows us to see a new perspective of war for those left behind. It is not just the lives of soldiers that are changed forever because of war. If I can spell because. I can't. That's why it's important. You don't need to label everything for your audience. So I'm going to finish with that one. So it makes sense for them. Okay, so this is a really great example. It has great language. It has a clear representation, has a clear explanation, but it lets itself down in the analysis. So what happens in this paragraph is that they begin to just identify the techniques and tell me what the technique does. So that cohesion too, how does that show the representation? So what we've got here, they symbolize the pain of losing a loved one. Beautiful language. I questioned this. If it doesn't have direct purpose and cohesion, why are we hearing about it? Now, when we get to I personifies Britain's loss, Britain being the poet, we need that link. And furthermore, the repetitive word perhaps shows the idealized future. Now, idealized future in no way connects with that representation. We need to go back and talk about it is that loss of life. I don't know what it is. It could be a hot dog. Compares the future she imagined to what her life is now. There's still that disjointedness. These are all kind of standalone statements with no clear cohesion and flow back. It's great with this evaluative language, but again, these are standalone points. So this person needs to go back and add in that cohesion. So what you need to look at, guys, is really this. How can I make my representation clearer? Do I have this? Am I using boring phrasing? Am I actually connecting and answering the question? How is the representation conveyed? Don't just tell me what the language features do. How do they convey that representation?